Captain John Miller examined the exoskeleton armor with a critical eye. The matte black surface caught the fluorescent light of the research lab, highlighting the intricate patterns of carbon fiber weave and ceramic plates. Humanity's finest creation, the MKVII Defender combat suit. "You really think this will hold up against alien weaponry?" asked Admiral Wilson, his weathered face a mask of skepticism. "We've tested it against everything in our arsenal, sir," Miller replied, running his hand over the suit's shoulder joint. "It survived direct hits from high-explosive rounds, railgun impacts, and even low-yield tactical nukes at range." The Admiral snorted. "That's human weapons, Captain. The Traxian fleet is 3 weeks from Earth orbit, and their technology is centuries beyond ours." Miller understood the concern. First contact with the Traxian collective had initially seemed promising. A technologically advanced spacefaring civilization, they had approached Earth with offers of cultural exchange. But diplomatic relations quickly soured when Earth refused to become a client state in their expanding empire. Now, humanity faced its first interstellar war. "The composite layering system is revolutionary," explained Dr. Emma Reed, the lead scientist on the project. She tapped a sequence on her tablet, and a holographic display appeared, showing the armor's cross-section. "We've incorporated graphene sheets with ceramic matrices and a liquid crystal layer that hardens instantly upon impact. The energy dispersal system is unlike anything we've created before." "Fancy terms for a fancy coffin," muttered Admiral Wilson. The lab door hissed open. Lieutenant Tom Davis strode in, followed by an unusual visitor, a tall, silver-skinned humanoid with 4 arms and compound eyes that shifted color with his mood. Ambassador Krell, the Galactic Union representative. "Admiral." Krell nodded respectfully. "I've been briefed on your defensive preparations." The alien's upper eyes blinked in what humans had learned was their equivalent of amusement. His lower pair changed from blue to a patronizing purple. "I must be frank," Krell continued. "Your technology is quaint. The Traxians use directed plasma weapons that operate at temperatures comparable to your sun's surface. No physical armor can withstand such energy concentrations." Miller tensed. Earth had hoped for support from the Galactic Union, but so far, all they'd received was a non-interference pact and occasional advisory visits. "With respect, Ambassador," Miller said, struggling to keep his voice even, "we've incorporated heat dissipation systems based on principles your delegation shared last year." Krell's eyes flashed briefly yellow, surprise, before returning to purple. "Admirable adaptation, but insufficient. The Traxian battle cruisers will cut through your defenses like, I believe your expression is hot knife through butter." Dr. Reed stepped forward. "Ambassador, perhaps you'd care to observe a demonstration." Before Krell could respond, an alarm blared. Admiral Wilson grabbed his comm unit. "Wilson here." The voice on the other end was frantic. "Sir, we have a situation. A single Traxian scout ship has breached our outer defense perimeter. It's heading straight for the Armstrong lunar base." The room fell silent. Armstrong Base housed Earth's primary weapons research facility and 10,000 civilians. "They're advancing their timeline," Miller said grimly. "Testing our defenses." Admiral Wilson turned to Miller. "Captain, I need a team on the moon in 3 hours. Take a squadron and the prototype suits." For the first time, Krell's eyes shifted to deep green. "Fear. That would be unwise," the alien cautioned. "The scout ships carry the same weaponry as their warships, merely in lesser quantities." Miller met the Admiral's gaze. "Sir, request permission to lead the defense team." Wilson nodded. "Granted. Show these Traxians what humans are made of." As Miller left to assemble his team, he heard Krell speaking softly to the Admiral. "I hope your species' remarkable determination can compensate for your technological disadvantage," the alien said. "For your sake." Armstrong Base huddled in the shadow of the Apennine Mountains on the lunar surface, its habitat domes gleaming under Earth's reflected light. Outside Airlock 7, Captain Miller and his squad of 12 soldiers performed final checks on their HFY defender suits. "Comms check," Miller ordered, his voice slightly distorted through the helmet speaker. "Jackson, operational. Rivera, operational. Cooper, operational." The check continued until all 12 had confirmed their systems were functioning. Miller nodded, satisfied. Each soldier was equipped with the standard-issue Union Defense Force railgun and sidearm, the best humanity had to offer, which still felt woefully inadequate against alien technology. "Command, this is Luna Defense Team. We are suited up and ready for deployment," Miller reported. Admiral Wilson's voice crackled through the comm. "Understood, Captain. Traxian scout ship has landed 2 kilometers west of your position. Intelligence suggests a small incursion team, likely 5 to 7 combatants. Your mission is to protect the civilian habitats and capture alien technology if possible." "Understood, sir." Miller signaled his team forward. They moved with practiced efficiency across the lunar surface, their boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The suit's enhanced mobility systems made their movements fluid despite the low gravity. "Keep alert," Miller warned. "We have no effective combat data against their weapons or tactics." "Captain." Private Cooper's voice was tense. "Movement at 2 o'clock, half a kilometer out." Miller raised his hand, signaling the team to halt and take cover behind a ridge of lunar rock. He switched to his scope view, magnifying the area Cooper had indicated. 3 figures moved across the lunar landscape with an unsettling grace. They wore what appeared to be sleek, form-fitting suits that shimmered with an iridescent glow. No helmets were visible, their angular, reptilian heads exposed to the vacuum without apparent discomfort. "What the hell?" whispered Sergeant Rivera. "They're breathing in vacuum." "Different biology," replied Dr. Reed over the comm. She'd insisted on monitoring the mission from the base, or more likely, some kind of personal shield technology that maintains atmosphere around their bodies. "They're heading directly for Habitat Dome 3, Miller observed. "That's primarily civilian housing and hydroponics." "Can't let them reach it," Jackson said grimly. Miller weighed their options: ambush the aliens with their untested armor against unknown weapons, or fall back to establish a defensive perimeter around the habitat. "We intercept now," he decided. "Rivera, take your fire team left. Jackson, right flank. Cooper with me up the middle." Standard pincer maneuver. The team split smoothly into their positions. Miller led Cooper and 3 others in a direct approach, using the undulating lunar terrain for cover. At 300 meters, one of the aliens stopped abruptly, turning its elongated head toward Miller's position. It raised a slim device that gleamed eerily in the stark light. "We've been spotted. Evasive action," Miller shouted. The alien weapon discharge, a blindingly bright stream of blue-white energy that sizzled through the vacuum toward them. Miller dove behind a boulder, but Private Watson wasn't fast enough. The plasma bolt struck him squarely in the chest. What should have been a soldier's death was instead a moment that would change the course of human history. The HFY armor didn't disintegrate as Ambassador Krell had predicted. Instead, the liquid crystal layer instantly hardened while the outer ablative coating vaporized, dispersing the plasma energy across the entire suit's surface. Watson staggered backward but remained standing. I'm okay." Watson's disbelieving voice crackled through the comms. Suit integrity at 72%. It held. The alien that had fired froze in what appeared to be shock. Miller didn't waste the opportunity. "Open fire," he commanded. Railgun rounds streaked across the lunar surface, the hypervelocity projectiles striking with devastating force. 2 of the aliens went down immediately, their shields flaring bright before failing catastrophically. The 3rd alien raised its weapon again, this time aiming directly at Miller. The plasma bolt struck his shoulder, the impact throwing him off balance. Searing heat radiated through the suit, but the armor held. "All teams converge," Miller ordered, advancing and firing methodically. The remaining alien dropped its weapon and raised its hands in what was unmistakably a universal gesture of surrender. As Miller approached the alien, he received an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Wilson's voice was filled with something Miller hadn't heard in months: hope. "Captain, we're getting it all through your helmet feed. Your armor worked. It actually worked." Miller looked back at his team, then at the surrendering alien whose eyes now held a new emotion: fear. "Yes, sir," Miller replied. "I think the Traxians may want to reconsider their invasion plans." The debriefing room aboard the UDF flagship, Resilient, hummed with tension. Captain Miller, still in his battle-worn MKVI suit with the chest plate removed for inspection, sat across from Admiral Wilson and a delegation of hastily assembled military officials. The plasma impact left significant scoring on the outer layer, Dr. Reed explained, pointing to the damaged armor plate being examined by the engineering team. But the energy dispersal system functioned exactly as theorized. The liquid crystal matrix hardened instantaneously, while the carbon nanofiber sublayers conducted the thermal energy away from the impact point. General Hayes, a stern woman with close-cropped gray hair, leaned forward. "And the captured Traxian?" "Being held in a specialized containment cell," Admiral Wilson replied. "It's called itself a Scout Commander Vex and has requested diplomatic talks." Miller snorted. "Funny how quickly they want to talk when they realize we can fight back." The room fell silent as the door slid open. Ambassador Krell entered, followed by two other alien species Miller had never seen before, one with translucent skin that revealed shadowy internal organs, and another resembling an upright insectoid with chitinous plates. "Captain Miller," Krell's voice carried an unfamiliar tone of respect. "Allow me to introduce Representatives Toole and Mech from the Galactic Union Security Council. They have reassessed Earth's position in light of recent events." The insectoid, Mech, clicked its mandibles together in what Miller assumed was their version of speech. A small device at its throat translated. "Your defensive technology is unprecedented among emerging species," it said. "The capacity to withstand Traxian plasma weapons changes certain assumptions." Miller glanced at Admiral Wilson, who nodded slightly. "What assumptions would those be?" Miller asked. The translucent alien, Toole, spoke in a melodious whisper. "The Traxian collective has expanded by conquering 12 systems in the past century. Their technological supremacy in weapons development has made resistance impractical for most species." "You mean futile," Miller corrected. "Indeed," Toole acknowledged. "Until now." Ambassador Krell's upper eyes blinked rapidly. "The Galactic Union operates on principles of non-interference with developing civilizations, but also maintains balance between established powers. Your armor technology represents a significant shift in that balance." "You're saying you'll help us now because we've proven useful?" Dr. Reed asked, her voice sharp with accusation. "I'm saying," Krell replied carefully, "that the Security Council has authorized me to offer Earth full defensive alliance status, rather than the observer position previously extended." Admiral Wilson leaned back, his expression guarded. "And what would this full alliance status entail?" Mech's mandibles clicked again. "Exchange of defensive technologies, trade routes protection, and most importantly, a declaration to the Traxian collective that further aggression against Earth will be met with a unified response from all Union members." The implication was clear. Earth had suddenly become valuable. Miller stood, wincing slightly as the bruised ribs from the plasma impact made themselves known. "With respect," he said, addressing the aliens, "where was this offer when we were facing extinction 3 days ago?" Krell had the decency to look uncomfortable, his lower eyes shifting to a muted gray. "Politics is universal, Captain," the ambassador said quietly. "But so is opportunity." Before Miller could respond, an aide rushed into the room. "Admiral, urgent transmission from Luna Command. The Traxian prisoner is requesting to speak with Captain Miller specifically." Wilson frowned. "Why?" Unknown, sir, but it claims to have critical information about the main Traxian fleet. All eyes turned to Miller. He straightened, ignoring the pain. I'll talk to it. 20 minutes later, Miller stood outside the containment cell, observing the Traxian through reinforced transparent aluminum. Scout Commander Vex was taller than Miller had realized during the brief lunar encounter, nearly 7 feet of lean reptilian muscle covered in iridescent scales. Its eyes, vertical slits of amber, followed Miller's movements with predatory focus. "You wore the black shell," Vex said, its voice a peculiar hiss through the translator. "The one that refused to burn." Miller nodded. "I did. Our intelligence said your species was primitive, technologically inferior." The alien's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. "Yet you created something unknown even to the collective senior scientists." "We're full of surprises," Miller replied evenly. The Traxian's mouth formed what might have been a smile, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "My fleet approaches with 15 war vessels, Captain, each carrying enough firepower to reduce your cities to ash." Vex leaned closer to the barrier. Unless what? "Unless we negotiate your armor technology for our withdrawal." The alien's eyes narrowed. "And perhaps something more valuable than peace." Miller maintained a neutral expression, but his mind raced with implications. "I'm listening." The conference room aboard the orbital station Unity was crowded with Earth's highest-ranking military and scientific personnel. Holographic displays showed the approaching Traxian fleet, 15 warships in tight formation, still 4 days from Earth at their current velocity. Captain Miller stood beside Admiral Wilson as Dr. Reed presented her findings. "Based on our interrogation of Scout Commander Vex and analysis of their captured equipment, we've confirmed 3 critical facts," she said, bringing up a detailed schematic. "First, Traxian plasma weapons operate on principles similar to our theoretical models, but with a power generation system centuries beyond our capability." She swiped to the next display, a rotating model of the MKVI armor. "Second, our armor's effectiveness wasn't just luck. The layered composition we developed has properties that uniquely counter their plasma technology by dispersing the energy more efficiently than any material known to the Traxians." General Hayes frowned. "And they want to trade for this technology. Seems suspicious." "It is," Miller agreed, which brings us to the third finding. Dr. Reed nodded grimly. "Scout Commander Vex has confirmed what we suspected. The Traxians aren't acting independently. They're proxies, enforcers for a species called the Monarchs." Ambassador Krell, who had been silent until now, stood abruptly. His 4 arms tensed, and his compound eyes flashed a deep crimson. "That is concerning," the alien said carefully. "The Monarchs are not officially recognized by the Galactic Union." "Because you fear them," Miller stated, watching Krell's reaction. The ambassador's hesitation was answer enough. "According to Vex," Admiral Wilson continued, "the Monarchs control 27 systems through various proxy species. The Traxians are just their most recent acquisition." "Slaves," Miller corrected bluntly. "They're slaves with better weapons than their masters, sent to conquer new territories, while the Monarchs remain safely anonymous." Dr. Reed brought up a new display showing a complex molecular structure. "This is the most valuable information Vex provided. Traxian neurobiology includes symbiotic organisms that function as control mechanisms, implanted by the Monarchs to ensure obedience." "Mind control parasites," General Hayes said incredulously. "Essentially, yes. And Vex claims there's a significant resistance movement within the Traxian collective that seeks liberation." Miller cleared his throat. "That's what Vex is actually offering in exchange for our armor technology. The means to shield their resistance fighters from the Monarchs' control signals while they attempt a coordinated rebellion." The room erupted in discussion. Admiral Wilson raised his hand for silence. "This changes everything," he said. "If we help the Traxians overthrow their controllers, we potentially convert an enemy into an ally." Ambassador Krell's eyes had shifted to an anxious yellow. You would be directly challenging the monarchs. The Galactic Union has avoided this conflict for centuries. Because you thought it was unwinnable, Miller said. But now we have something they don't. The Admiral's comm unit beeped. He listened briefly, his expression darkening. The Traxian Admiral is requesting direct communication, he announced. They're accelerating. New arrival estimate, 18 hours. Miller exchanged glances with Dr. Reed. This was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. 30 minutes later, the main view screen filled with the image of a Traxian much older than Vex, its scales dulled to a matte gray, wearing ornate armor covered in glowing sigils. I am High Commander Drez of the Traxian Collective, it announced without preamble. Your capture of Scout Commander Vex violates our territorial claim to this system. Admiral Wilson stepped forward. Earth acknowledges no such claim, High Commander. Your scout ship violated our sovereign territory and attacked a civilian installation. The Traxian's vertical pupils narrowed. Return our officer and prepare your world for integration into the collective. Resistance will result in planetary bombardment. Miller studied the alien commander carefully, noting the slight twitch at its neck, precisely where Vex had indicated the neural control implants were located. High Commander, Miller said, stepping into view. We've had an interesting conversation with Scout Commander Vex about the monarchs. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Drez's entire body stiffened, and its eyes widened in what could only be described as terror. Such matters are not for discussion, the Traxian hissed. Return Vex immediately. Further delay will. Will what? Miller interrupted. Force you to do exactly what the monarchs have already ordered you to do anyway. We know you're not in control, Commander. The Traxian's face contorted in a struggle that seemed both physical and mental. When it spoke again, its voice was lower, almost a whisper. You know nothing of our situation. We know enough, Miller replied, nodding to Dr. Reed. She activated a secondary transmission. Data streams containing the molecular structure of the neural implants and the preliminary designs for a device that could block their control signals. We're offering you a choice, High Commander, Admiral Wilson said. Continue as pawns in someone else's war, or join us against your real enemy. Drez stared at the data, its expression unreadable. Then, without warning, the transmission cut off. Well, General Hayes said into the silence that followed, I think we just escalated the situation. Miller nodded grimly, or gave them exactly what they needed. The next 12 hours would determine which was true. Earth's orbital defense platforms hummed with activity as the Traxian fleet entered the outer reaches of the solar system. Rather than the expected 15 vessels, sensors now detected 23 ships in a modified attack formation. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Resilient, watching as the tactical display updated with the aliens' approach vectors. They've divided into 3 battle groups, Admiral Wilson observed. 2 are maintaining course toward Earth. The 3rd has altered trajectory toward Luna. Returning to the scene of their humiliation, Miller murmured, or securing their captured technology and personnel. The Admiral nodded. Either way, it splits our defensive capabilities. The communications officer interrupted. Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Union vessel Arbitrator. Ambassador Krell is requesting permission to dock. Wilson raised an eyebrow at Miller. Curious timing. Permission granted, the Admiral replied. 20 minutes later, Ambassador Krell strode onto the bridge accompanied by Representatives Toole and Mech. But Miller's attention was drawn to a 4th figure that followed them. A massive being encased in ornate armor that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, its helmet concealed any features that might have identified its species. Admiral Wilson, Captain Miller, Krell began, his voice unusually formal. May I present Sentinel Prime Zol of the Galactic Union Intervention Corps. The armored figure inclined its head slightly but remained silent. I was unaware the Galactic Union had an intervention corps. Admiral Wilson said carefully. Mech's mandibles clicked rapidly. Its existence is not widely advertised. The course activates only during specific escalation events, such as potential rebellion against the monarchs, Miller guessed. The armored figure, Zol, spoke for the first time, its voice resonating with harmonic undertones that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The Union officially maintains a policy of non-interference, it said. Unofficially, we have monitored the monarch's expansion with growing concern for 11 of your centuries. Yet you did nothing, Miller challenged. Until now, Zol corrected. Your armor technology provides a unique opportunity that has never before existed. Before Miller could respond, the tactical officer called out, Traxian vessels accelerating. Energy signatures indicate weapons powering up. The view screen shifted to show the approaching alien fleet, their hulls now glowing with ominous blue light as plasma weapons charge. Ambassador Krell turned to Admiral Wilson. How many of your soldiers are equipped with the MKVI armor? 347 combat-ready units, Wilson replied. Not nearly enough to repel a full-scale invasion. Sentinel Zol stepped forward, towering over the humans. My vessel carries 1,000 elite guards, each equipped with Union combat systems. We offer them in Earth's defense. Miller exchanged a surprised glance with the Admiral. That's generous. What's the catch? No catch, Captain, Zol replied. Merely alignment of interests. The monarchs have long prevented multiple species from joining the Galactic Union through proxy threats. Their defeat would benefit all. Admiral Wilson didn't hesitate. We accept your assistance, Sentinel. The tactical display suddenly flashed red. Incoming transmission from the Traxian command ship, the communications officer announced. The view screen changed to show High Commander Drez, but something was different. The Traxian's posture was rigid, unnatural, and its eyes glowed with an inner blue light that hadn't been present before. When it spoke, the voice was layered with subharmonics that hadn't been there in their previous communication. Humans of Earth, it said, the translator struggling to keep pace with the altered speech patterns. Your interference in collective matters has been noted. Your attempt to subvert our authority is futile. Miller realized with a chill that they were no longer speaking with Drez, but with whatever controlled him. The monarchs, I presume, he said, stepping forward. The Traxian's face twisted into an unnatural smile. We are the guiding intelligence behind many civilizations. You will be no different. We respectfully decline, Admiral Wilson replied. Decline. The creature using Drez laughed, a horrible, discordant sound. You misunderstand. This is not an offer. It is your inevitable future. The transmission cut abruptly as the tactical display erupted with warnings. Multiple plasma launches detected, the tactical officer shouted, targeting orbital platforms and surface installations. Admiral Wilson turned to Sentinel Zol. If your troops are coming, now would be the time. The armored figure nodded once, then raised a gauntleted hand to its helmet. Intervention Corps, deploy. Across the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple as previously invisible ships suddenly appeared, disgorging hundreds of smaller craft that streaked toward the Traxian fleet. Impressive, Miller said. Merely the beginning, Zol replied. But the true test remains. The monarchs rarely engage directly if they perceive a genuine threat. The sentence hung unfinished as the first plasma bolts struck Earth's orbital defenses, lighting up the darkness of space with explosions. The battle for humanity's future had begun. Captain Miller grimaced as the Resilient shuddered under another near miss. The orbital battle had raged for 3 hours with no clear victor emerging. Though the Galactic Union's intervention court had managed to neutralize 7 Traxian vessels, the remaining ships fought with increasing desperation and effectiveness. They're adapting to our tactics, Admiral Wilson observed grimly. The monarchs must be feeding them real-time combat data. Miller nodded, studying the tactical display. The Traxian ships had formed a new pattern, one that exploited gaps in Earth's defensive screen. Sir, he said, pointing to a particular cluster of enemy vessels, they're concentrating fire on defense platform Epsilon. If it falls, they'll have a clear shot at the North American shield generators. And millions of civilians, Wilson finished. He turned to his communications officer. Direct all available Union fighters to reinforce Epsilon Sector. Sentinel Zoll, who had remained on the Resilience Bridge throughout the battle, stepped forward. Admiral, I recommend a different approach. The Monarchs are controlling this battle through the neural links. If we could disrupt those links. We've been trying, Dr. Reed interjected from her station. Based on Vex's information, she had been working to develop a signal disruptor. But the Traxian ships are shielded against conventional jamming. Miller had been watching the battle patterns with growing suspicion. Dr. Reed, could the neural control system be centralized? Perhaps on a specific ship. She considered this. It's possible. The Monarchs would want direct oversight of such an important operation. Then we find that ship and take it out, Miller said decisively. Admiral Wilson shook his head. How? Every time we concentrate our fire, they shift their defensive screens, and we can't identify which vessel might contain Monarch representatives. Miller glanced at Scout Commander Vex, who had been permitted on the bridge under guard to provide tactical information about Traxian capabilities. Vex, would the Monarchs be physically present or controlling remotely? The Traxian scales rippled, their equivalent of a shudder. They'd rarely leave their central systems, but for an operation of this significance, it's possible. If they are present, Sentinel Zoll added, they would be on the command vessel. Miller studied the enemy formation again. Which one is the command ship? Vex pointed to a vessel near the rear of the formation, larger than the others, with distinctive markings along its hull. High Commander Drez's flagship, the Sovereign Dominion, the Traxian explained. But it's heavily guarded and shielded. A direct assault would be suicide. Miller exchanged a look with Admiral Wilson. An idea was forming, dangerous, perhaps impossible, but potentially decisive. Not if they invite us aboard, Miller said slowly. Dr. Reed looked up sharply. What are you suggesting? A ruse, Miller explained. We offer surrender terms that would require a face-to-face meeting. Given what we know of the Monarch's arrogance, they might agree just to gloat. Admiral Wilson frowned. And once aboard, a small team in HFY armor could plant Dr. Reed's signal disruptors directly at the source. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Sentinel. Miller turned to the towering alien. Would your troops be ready to exploit any confusion among the Traxian forces if their neural control was suddenly severed? The Intervention Corps stands ready, Zoll confirmed. But boarding their command vessel, even with your remarkable armor, the risk is extreme. I'll lead the team myself, Miller stated. I'm coming too, Vex said unexpectedly. All eyes turned to the Traxian. My neural implants were damaged during capture. I can move freely among my kind without arousing immediate suspicion. Admiral Wilson considered the plan for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Make the call, he ordered. Within 20 minutes, Miller stood in the Resilience launch bay with his chosen team. 5 soldiers in HFY armor and Scout Commander Vex. Dr. Reed made final adjustments to the signal disruptors they would carry. These need to be placed within 50 meters of the neural control transmitter, she explained, handing the devices to Miller. Once activated, you'll have approximately 2 minutes to get clear before the Traxians realize what's happening. Understood, Miller replied, securing the devices in his armor's utility compartments. Admiral Wilson approached, his expression grave. The Traxians have accepted our proposal for surrender negotiations. They're expecting an unarmed diplomatic shuttle with you, myself, and Dr. Reed aboard. They agreed too easily, Miller observed. Of course they did, Wilson said grimly. They intend to capture Earth's highest military commander and a creator of the armor technology in one swoop, which is exactly what we want them to think. The Admiral clasped Miller's armored shoulder. Good luck, Captain. The fate of 2 species may rest on this mission. As Miller and his team boarded the shuttle, He caught Sentinel Zol watching from across the hangar. The massive alien made a curious gesture, 3 fingers pressed to its chest, then extended outward. A blessing of protection. Vex translated quietly, an ancient Union ritual reserved for the most valorous endeavors. Miller nodded in acknowledgement as the shuttle doors sealed. "Let's hope it works," he murmured as the craft launched toward the Traxian command ship. The deception was in motion. Now they just had to survive long enough to execute it. The diplomatic shuttle drifted toward the Sovereign Dominion's docking bay. Its running lights pulsing in the pattern Vex had indicated would signal peaceful intentions. Inside, Captain Miller and his team performed final checks on their weapons and the signal disruptors. "Remember," Miller instructed, "our priority is reaching the control center. Engage only if absolutely necessary. Until then." The team acknowledged the orders as the shuttle shuddered, caught in the Traxian vessel's tractor beam. "They're scanning us," Private Cooper reported from the pilot's seat. "Detecting our armor signatures." "As expected," Miller replied. "They believe we're surrendering our technology. Maintain calm silence once we dock." The shuttle settled onto the alien hangar deck with a gentle thud. Through the viewports, Miller could see at least 30 Traxian soldiers in formation, their plasma weapons at the ready. "Showtime," he muttered, nodding to his team. The shuttle door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Miller led the way, hands raised in the universal gesture of non-aggression, followed by his 5 soldiers and Vex. The Traxian guards tensed visibly at the sight of their captured officer. A tall Traxian with elaborate markings stepped forward. "I am Sub-Commander Kraz," it announced through a translator. "You will surrender your weapons and follow me to High Command." Miller complied, handing over his sidearm, but not the hidden railgun built into his armor's gauntlet. The other soldiers did the same. "Our understanding," Miller said carefully, "was that we would meet with High Commander Drez to discuss terms." Kraz's vertical pupils narrowed. "The commander awaits." As do others. They were escorted through corridors of gleaming metal, passing numerous Traxian crew members who stopped to stare at the human delegation. Miller memorized their route, noting key junctions and potential escape paths. "Security checkpoint ahead," Vex murmured quietly. "Standard procedure, neural verification." Miller tensed. This could end their mission before it began. As they approached the checkpoint, Kraz turned to the guards. "Diplomatic exemption. Direct orders from High Command." The guards hesitated, then nodded. Miller suppressed a smile. Even under Monarch control, it seemed some aspects of military protocol remained unchanged across species. They were led into a vast chamber dominated by a circular table. Holographic displays showed the ongoing battle, Earth's forces gradually being pushed back despite the Union intervention. High Commander Drez stood at the far side, his posture rigid and unnatural as before. But Miller's attention was drawn to 3 figures beside him. Tall, slender beings with pallid skin stretched tight over elongated skulls. Their eyes were enormous black orbs without pupils, and they wore flowing robes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. The monarchs had indeed come to witness humanity's submission. "Captain Miller," Drez's voice still carried the unnatural harmonics of monarch control. "You have made the wise choice. Your species' survival is assured through capitulation." Miller stepped forward, scanning the room discreetly. On a raised platform behind the monarchs sat what must be the neural control transmitter, a pulsing crystalline structure surrounded by energy fields. "Before we proceed," Miller said, "I wish to understand who I'm truly surrendering to." The central monarch glided forward with unsettling grace. When it spoke, its voice bypassed the translator entirely, resonating directly in Miller's mind. "We are the architects of order," it said. "For millennia, we have guided lesser species toward their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Your kind shows potential, but requires direction." Miller fought against the invasive presence in his mind. The HFY armor wasn't designed to shield against psychic intrusion, but its neural interface provided some resistance. Your definition of direction seems a lot like slavery, Miller replied, taking another careful step forward. He needed to get closer to the transmitter. The monarch's lipless mouth curved in what might have been amusement. A primitive perspective. We offer elevation through submission. Your armor technology intrigues us. It suggests unexpected innovation. This will serve the collective well. Miller glanced at his team, giving the prearranged signal with a subtle hand gesture. 3 fingers tapped against his thigh. They began to spread out around the chamber's perimeter, movements deliberate and non-threatening. About our terms, Miller said, drawing the alien's attention. We're prepared to share our armor designs in exchange for Earth's autonomy. The Central Monarch's eyes narrowed. You misunderstand your position, human. You will provide all technological data, and Earth will serve as we direct. I thought you might say that, Miller replied. Then, activating his comm with a jaw movement. Now, everything happened at once. Miller's hidden gauntlet weapon deployed, firing a high-velocity projectile that shattered the force field surrounding the neural transmitter. His team simultaneously activated their armor's emergency shields, creating a momentary distraction as they moved toward the transmitter platform. Treachery! Shrieked one of the monarchs, its mental voice slicing painfully through Miller's consciousness. The Traxian guards raised their weapons, but hesitated, their conditioning momentarily confused by the unexpected attack. That split second was all Miller's team needed. Private Jackson reached the platform first, planting 2 disruptor devices directly on the crystalline structure. Cooper and Rivera secured the remaining approaches, their railguns now fully deployed. High Commander Drez convulsed violently, the neural implant at his neck pulsing with erratic light as the disruptors began interfering with the control signal. Kill them, commanded the lead monarch, its mental voice now tinged with something Miller hadn't expected. Fear. The Traxian guards moved to obey, but Vex suddenly stepped forward, addressing them in their native language. The translator rendered his words for Miller's benefit. Brothers, the control weakens. Remember who you were before the monarchs claimed your minds. Several guards lowered their weapons, confusion evident in their postures. Others maintained their aim, the neural implants forcing compliance despite the disruption. Miller used the distraction to plant the final disruptor directly on the control console. Transmitting activation codes now, he announced over the secure comm. Stand by for neural disruption. The monarchs realized what was happening too late. The lead alien lunged toward Miller with unexpected speed, its elongated fingers stretching into claws. Miller barely managed to dodge, the alien's talons scraping across his armor with a sound like grinding metal. You cannot resist us. The monarch hissed directly into his mind. We have controlled civilizations since before your kind learned to make fire. Miller stood his ground. Then perhaps it's time someone taught you a new lesson. He pressed the final activation sequence. The disruptors pulsed with brilliant blue energy that spread throughout the chamber. The crystalline transmitter shattered, exploding in a shower of fragments. The effect on the Traxians was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the ship, and presumably across the fleet, the alien soldiers staggered as if physically struck. High Commander Drez fell to his knees, clawing at the implant on his neck, which now sparked and smoked. What have you done? The monarch demanded. Miller's comm unit crackled. Captain, this is Admiral Wilson. We're seeing massive disruptions across the Traxian fleet. Their attack formations are breaking up. What's your status? Mission accomplished. Admiral, Miller replied, watching as Vex organized the newly liberated Traxians. The neural control has been neutralized. The Traxian rebellion is underway. The Galactic Union forces are reporting the same, Wilson continued. Sentinel Zol requests permission to board the Traxian command ship to secure the monarchs. Miller looked at the 3 aliens, now surrounded by the very soldiers they had so recently controlled. Tell them to hurry. I think the Traxians might have their own ideas about justice. High Commander Drez had recovered enough to stand, though he moved with the uncertainty of someone using their own body for the first time. He approached Miller slowly. "For 3 generations, my people have been slaves in our own bodies," he said, his voice now free of the unnatural harmonics. "What you have done today, there is no adequate word in your language for such a debt." "Let's start with alliance," Miller suggested. "Earth and the Traxian collective against the Monarch's remaining forces." Drez nodded. "The first of many alliances, I suspect." 3 weeks later, Captain Miller stood in the observation lounge of the newly established Galactic Union Embassy on Earth. Through the panoramic windows, he could see the Traxian and Union vessels in high orbit, a defensive screen now protecting the planet rather than threatening it. Admiral Wilson joined him, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "Quite a few." Miller accepted the drink with a nod. "Not what I expected when we were preparing for extinction." "Ambassador Krell says the Union Council is formally recognizing Earth as a full member," Wilson said. "Apparently, being the catalyst for overthrowing the Monarch's shadow empire earns us some political capital." "And the Traxians?" "Busy dismantling the remaining control mechanisms throughout their territories. According to High Commander Drez, 17 previously subjugated species have already been liberated." Miller smiled slightly. "All because some aliens laughed at our primitive armor." "Speaking of which," Wilson continued, "Dr. Reed has incorporated some fascinating Traxian and Union technology into the HFY prototype. Apparently, your little adventure provided quite the research opportunity." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched Earth rotate slowly below. "You know what Sentinel Zol told me before departing," Wilson said finally. "That in 12,000 years of recorded galactic history, no emerging species has ever skipped the client state phase and moved directly to full membership. Until now." Miller raised his glass in a toast. "To human exceptionalism. And to aliens underestimating it," Wilson added with a smile. Their glasses clinked as, beyond the window, the first joint human-Traxian patrol vessel departed Earth orbit, its mission to seek out and liberate the remaining victims of the Monarch's crumbling empire. Humanity had not only survived its first interstellar conflict, it had changed the course of galactic history, all because some aliens had laughed at their armor.